Welcome back to Empowered Money, and today we're going to dive into another book review on Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. All right, now before we jump in, quick disclaimer, all the concepts I'll be discussing today come from Mike's book. What I'm sharing are my personal takeaways and interpretations for educational purposes only. This is not financial, tax, or legal advice, and if you're curious about the full system, I definitely recommend picking up the book yourself and consulting with a professional before making changes in your business. Now, as we get into this book review, super excited to share this with you. I finished this book last night. I've sent this out to probably 5 of my business owners, and a light bulb went off. It's like, this is it. This is it, right? And so I'm excited to share this book review with you here. And let's just start at the top. That the top is a problem this book is trying to solve, or this, I would say, system. Really, this is a book about a system here. Is frankly, there are a ton of broke entrepreneurs in this world. It's really sad. I do believe that the best way to build massive amounts of wealth in America is to start or buy and scale and sell a successful business. Now, whether you're selling it to the next generation, an internal employee, or an outside buyer, we can talk and we can help you guide through that. But in general, very few companies ever sold. Most of them run very mediocre and provide just enough for the business owner to provide for his family, and that's about it. And the truth is that most entrepreneurs would be better off going and getting a W-2 job, putting money into their 401k, getting the company matched, maybe getting some stock options, and having a consistent income throughout time, because that income is their income. Right. And when we get into the business owner world, we have this thing called revenue, and revenue is so different than income and profit. Right. And it's not very clear on how much of that revenue should the business owner put aside for himself and his future, and how much of that should he reinvest, and how much of that should he set aside for Uncle Sam. So we're constantly in this juggling act of falling behind Uncle Sam, not paying ourselves enough to become financially independent of the business, and not being clear on how much to reinvest in the business. And what we do, I say we, I'm including me in here because I am a business owner just like you. When I look and reflect on where a lot of my money has gone, we have poured so much money into my business, and obviously that's money that is not going to me personally in building my personal financial plan, right? Now, on the other hand, this business is an asset, and I will sell this business one day, and it will help me in my personal financial planning. That being said, a lot of the money that we've put into our business or reinvested, I'm putting that in quotation marks, are wasted dollars. They are. Whether it's overpaying, having too much staff, overpaying staff, whether it's marketing is the biggest one that I have just tried to find a way to get inbound leads, and frankly have failed miserably on it. So now I'm just marketing to my current clients and hopefully doing such an awesome job that they help me get more clients, right? But in general, it's amazing how much we will reinvest in our business, because in my opinion, our business is our baby. Now, I've got 2 kids and I love them dearly and I'll do anything for them. But when I look at my business, I've spent the last 15 years pouring my heart, my soul, and a lot of my money into building my business. There's no way that if you're a business owner, there's no way to say that your business is not also one of your babies, right? So just like we would sacrifice anything for our children, we tend to sacrifice anything and sometimes everything for our business without really keeping the end in mind on here, which is, hey, we want to become financially independent of our business personally. We want to make certain we don't get behind on taxes. We want to make certain that we are building a business that is profitable, because a profitable business is a sellable business. Right. So with that being said, that's kind of the context here. And what I love about this book is it lays out a framework of how much you should pay yourself, how much you should set aside for Uncle Sam, how much you should set aside for a rainy day, and how much you should set aside from an operating expenses. And it breaks it down into percentages so that you can go into your bank account at any certain point in time and you can have money go to those bank accounts. And it limits how much you can reinvest in your business. It limits how much you can pay yourself. It limits how much we do set aside for a rainy day. So we've got to get creative and work within those budgets. So that being said, let's hop into this book review. So most business owners have been taught this old formula. Sales minus expenses equals profit. But what happens here is businesses become what Mike calls cash eating machines. You work harder, the numbers get bigger, your revenue grows, but your profit stagnates here. The money doesn't stick. And you end up having more sales and more work and more stress, yet the same amount of profit at the end of the day, right? And the truth is most business owners don't make it past 5 years here. Many that do make it past 5 live in this gray zone of mediocrity, which it would almost be better if they did fail. But it's where this owner feels like they're trapped in this perpetual grind. They're on this treadmill. We talk about the W-2 treadmill, the corporate treadmill, as if there's not a treadmill in the business world where we just continuously work harder. And yes, other people are getting rich. We're hiring other people, right? We're building the employee base. We're adding a lot to the community here. We're paying Uncle Sam more, but at the end of the day, we never pay ourselves more, right? And that's this windmill that we got to get off of. So how do we do this? There's a core shift here in mentality. And so instead of profit being what is left over, sales minus expenses equal profit. Let's flip this formula here to sales minus profit equals expenses, right? So just like you set aside money for your 401k personally, and then you live off what's left over, let's take that same mentality to your business. So on the personal financial side, we always say there's two types of people. Those who spend first and save what's left, and guess what? There's never anything left. Are those who save first and then fit their lifestyle into what's left over, right? And those people are going to create financial wealth. They just are. Why can't we take the same mantra to our business? Why can't we set aside money personally first and then spend what's left over? And that's what this book is saying here. Right? So what this book does, and here's my favorite part of it, is that it breaks it up into different bank accounts for things like your profit, things like your taxes, things like your owner's pay and operating expenses here. And what happens is when we do this, and what it does, it sets up these different accounts and a percentage of every single dollar goes into these accounts. So let's talk about these percentages. In general, these are going to be different from every business, but typically it's laid out like this. 50% to your operating expenses. So let's take $1 million a year of revenue just for easy math. Out of $1 million, $500,000 needs to go, and it needs to go to employees, research. It needs to go to your typical bills that you have to pay on a monthly basis, and obviously inventory and equipment and things like that. So if you make $1 million, we got to set aside $500,000 for operating expenses here. All right. Now, the next one is taxes. We got to pay Uncle Sam. Right? So we need to set aside 15 to 20%. Let's go with 15% right now to taxes. And I want to talk about taxes here in a second, because I think this is the biggest takeaway that I've had in this book, right? Next is you got to pay yourself, right? So you got to pay yourself, let's say 25% there, right? So every $1 million your business earns, you earn 250,000 of that, right? And then let's put that remaining 10% into what we call a profit account, an emergency fund, right? By the way, let me just make a plug. If you're a small business owner and you don't have a banker that's ride or die, that's a great partner, we got to talk. We got to introduce you to the right person. A great banker will help you implement this system. And I've got one right now. I'm switching to it. So personally, I used to, bank with a large bank, not going to mention names, and all my money would go into one account and all my money would go out of the account. The problem is that there's no framework. All right. Yes, I pay myself a very small salary every single month. It's pennies, right? And pennies on the dollar, and that's automated. Other than that, I don't have any tax payments automated. I just got to hope I've got enough to pay my quarterly estimates in the bank account, right? I don't have anything really set aside specifically for an emergency fund. I don't have any profit set aside for a reward for a good year, right? So my old self, we're kind of still moving out of this, just one account, all income in, all expenses out, and hopefully we got enough left over to pay Uncle Sam. Right? And I automatically pay myself a small amount. Well, it's not working. And here's why, is that every single April, my accountant calls me and he says, Alan, I'm so glad that you paid your quarterly estimates. I'm like, well, yeah, me too. Right? Now I don't have to have a big tax bill. Right? He said, I'm so glad you paid because you had such a great year that we owe double the amount of taxes. And I want you to know this right now. If you are a business that is in its growth phase, eventually you will run into a tax problem because your quarterly estimates are based on last year's profit. And if you're growing, that means your tax bill is going, you are going to be more profitable and your tax bill is going to be higher. So rather than just paying your quarterly estimates, how important is this now? Let's have an account specifically for paying your quarterly estimates. I'm going to send 15, maybe for some people it's 20% there every single year. Every single Friday, right? Every single Friday, we're going to go in. We're going to send 20% of our 20% of our revenue to that account. We're going to pay our estimates out of that account. But at the end of April, we are going to have money left over in that account, particularly if we're having a good year, right? If we're having a down year, obviously we might need to readjust, but let's assume that we are at least staying the same, if not growing. We're going to have extra money. So when that accountant calls me in April, says, Alan, I'm so glad you paid your quarterly estimates because we have doubled. Not a problem. Got it set away. So that's the biggest takeaway that I have from this, for me personally, for a lot of my business owners who struggle in staying ahead with taxes. But let's take one step back. How does this work? Okay. The idea here is that we have a slew of accounts at our bank. And the first account is what we call the income account. This is or we can call it the incoming account. All your revenue goes into this one account. Right? No expenses come out of this account. It is simply there as a placeholder. And we want to zero this account out every single Friday. Now, I say every Friday. If you do it every other Friday, totally fine too. But basically, when income comes in, it goes into that account. And now here's the deal. You as a business owner have to manually go in and make this transfer. Okay. I only found one bank online that is really, it's an online bank particularly set up for profit first banking, and it does this automatically for you. I haven't found a single other bank that does it. And I would rather have a regional bank here that I have a really good partnership with rather than an online bank for this. So what does this mean? We got to do some manual work. And guess what? I don't mind that because I'll tell you this from doing 15 years of personal financial planning. If we automate everything, we never look at anything, right? For instance, when your credit card is automatically being paid off, you don't even look at your expenses, right? So I like the idea of spending what we call 15 minutes on Financial Fridays, right? So 15 minutes on Fridays, we call it Financial Fridays, to look at all your expenses, to look at all your revenue, and to get a clear picture of how that week went that week, right? Once again, if we try to do it every Friday, we'll end up doing it every other Friday. That's totally fine. As long as we do it once a month, that's totally fine. But here's the deal. All your money comes into that incoming account. And then based off of your unique percentages, okay, we then move that to differing accounts. So the first one would be an operating expenses account, an OpEx account, right? We move 50 cents on the dollar to that account. Right. The next one might be your owner's compensation. We move 25 cents of every dollar that comes in, 25%, whatever. Let's say it's 100 grand for easy math. You're going to move 50 grand to the operating expenses, 25 grand to the owner's comp, 15,000, 15% to taxes, and then another 10% to an account that I like to call profit account or an emergency fund here. Right. And in general, as a business owner, you need to look at your expenses and have about 6 months saved up in an emergency fund. So what I would do for you is say, okay, my profit is going to be anything above and beyond 6 months of expenses. Okay. So I don't think you need two accounts for this. I think we can keep it simple and keep it one account. But let's say you're spending $10,000 a month. Okay. Okay. As soon as that gets to $60,000, you can make 6 months without any income here, right? And I realize that maybe that's a little long. Maybe if we have a good business line of credit, we can lower that to 3 months and 30K, right? But let's just say $60,000 here for easy math, right? So anything above that 60K at the end of the year, I think it's easy for you to take as profit, right? That is a profit to you, right? That's a good dividend to you. Okay. So let's go back through this. You make $1, 50 cents goes to operating expenses. What does that cover? Marketing, people, expenses, inventory, right? You have to run the business. Now, Parkinson's law comes in here. Okay. When money is limited, you are going to get more creative, right? When money's not limited, when we don't have parameters, you're going to look at your bank account and you're going to say, yeah, I've got money for that new marketing endeavor, right? And so you just throw money at it. Right? Well, I got that. Yeah, I can pay to be a sponsor at this thing. We got money in there. No, we need to limit this, right? And maybe we even have percentages within our operating expense for labor and for marketing and things of that nature, right? Maybe we can even go deeper and create more bank accounts specifically for those functions, right? But at the end of the day, we got to make do on that 50% running the business. And you might say, man, that really is going to impact our overall growth here. I understand if you're new in the business, it's going to be really hard to do that. I get it, right? But we do want to work towards that as a goal here. And the owner talks about this. We live in a world right now, in this tech world, this private equity world, where these businesses aren't really playing fair. They're not playing by the normal rules of business, right? What do I mean by that is oftentimes a lot of these companies are throwing money at revenue and at growth. Okay. And they're hoping to find the profit later, whether that's a Google, who, by the way, we always see the ones that win, the Googles, the Facebooks, right? But LinkedIn still hasn't provided a profit on here, right? So a lot of times we see these big companies that are throwing money after revenue, hoping to find profit later. And as small business owners, we just can't play by those rules. We've got to find profit first and then use that profit to help drive revenue long term. All right. So that being said, Parkinson's law kicks in, right? Now, here's once again what I love. Number one is the taxing. We already talked about that. Number two is it gives you a framework of how much you should pay yourself. Okay, every $1 million is $250,000. Now remember, that's after tax because the business is going to pay the tax out of the tax account. That's after tax, so that's pretty good income right there. That might be like 400 grand of a W-2 income would net you 250 after tax, something of that nature, right? So now all of a sudden you have 250. That's 20 grand, roughly 20 grand a month to run your household and save money into your retirements here. So what the Profit First book does in one of the later chapters, no offense to the author, I think it's his weakest chapter, say, hey, why don't we take profit first to personal finances? And I don't think he does a really good job in that chapter. I think he kind of lets his biases against debt and things like that really, come in, and he just needs to kind of stay in his lane. But let's take this concept of a business where we are profit first, expenses second, right? And let's take that to your personal finances. Okay, 20 grand hits the bank account. All right, a certain amount of that needs to be going to an emergency fund, right? And once we get the emergency fund there, we don't need to be putting any more money into cash. And then all of a sudden, we need to be putting money into investments, right? And then in general, could be a stock account, could be permanent life insurance. It could be a myriad of things to help you build wealth over time, right? So even though we have 20 grand, we probably need to have a certain percentage, let's call it 25% or so, that's going to build your long-term financial planning, and we're living off the rest. So let's say we live off 15K a month and we're saving 5K a month, right? And if that's not enough, then obviously you know the formula now. Hey, if we need 500 grand after taxes to live, we have a formula to reach it. And what it is okay, we got to double revenue. We got to go from 1 million to 2 million, right? Well, let's say we don't need 500 grand. Let's say it's somewhere between 250 and 500. Okay, we need to grow revenue by 50%. You can now reverse engineer how much you need your company to grow to be able to send your kids to that private school that you want to be able to go buy that large house, for it to be able to have your spouse stay at home. I'm doing that right now. I've got 2 kids here. We've got big goals here. And I tell you what, I went to a dad's night out of my kids' preschool. It was a Catholic preschool, right? And all their kids are going to go through all the way through the Catholic high school, and shoot, it tends to feed in like Notre Dame or something. So I asked ChatGPT to do the math, and it was like $250,000 per kid. My wife wants 4 kids, right? So I went home. I told my wife, said, Allison, I gotta make a ton more money here in order to do this, right? So luckily I have a framework of saying, okay, if we need to bring in more after taxes here, what do we need the business to grow to do that? That's what's the coolest part about this, is that it gives you a framework to think about growth and how that relates to your personal expenses. I just want to reiterate, we have to be personally financially independent from our business. And if we're not there, we got to get there. Just like a W-2 person is trying to become financially independent from their job, from their corporation, we got to get you financially independent from your company. That's where life is really lived here on this. All right, let's take a look at a couple other things that we haven't talked to about. All right, so hey, the author is like, hey, this is more about numbers. It's about mindset here. We do want to be thrifty when we are working with our business. Even if you're not somebody that really watches your personal budget, I think it's even more important to watch your business budget here, right? Talks a little bit about 10x vision, which we're going to talk a ton about. And I love that. Hey, what do we have to do to 10x your business in the next 10 years? And it's about a 25% CAGR every single year. We got to grow about 25% every single year here, right? Another big takeaway, efficiency comes from focus, right? The top 20% of your clients are the ones that drive 80% of your revenue here. We've all heard that. And I'm reading another book right now that we'll do a book review called The AI Driven Leader. And it just, every single book I've read on scaling, on profit, on AI, It all comes down to the 80-20 rule. How are we better serving that 20% that really drives the profit? And how are we automating the other 80% that aren't, right? And last but not least, he says, hey, your personal finances and your business finances are soulmates. I could not agree more. If your personal finances are struggling, it's going to be really hard for you to go get a loan to build your business or to go acquire that next business, right? If your business finances are struggling, it's going to be really hard for you to set aside personally for your future. The two work hand in hand, right? Unfortunately, we tend to always veer towards the side of building the business and never think about our personal finances. Okay, so call to action. So let's wrap this up here. Some big takeaways. Stop chasing revenue and growth and start prioritizing profit. Revenue and growth will come. Okay. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king here. If you're a business owner who feels stuck in the cycle of growth without profit, profit first. Here's a must read. Right? It's practical, it's simple, and can change the way it could change your life. And change the way you run your business, but it also change your life here. All right. Once again, these are just my reflections here. The full system is obviously in the book, Profit First. So if this is speaking to you, you're like, yes, 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 I need this. These are my problems that I'm having. Then hey, check out this book, buy the book, read the book here. But overall, thanks for turning into another episode, another book review of Empowered Money. If you enjoyed today's review, please subscribe and share it with other business owners who could use healthier relationships with their money and with their business here. As always, if you'd like help applying these kinds of strategies here in your own financial life, feel free to reach out.